Aloha, welcome to Optimize Your Now podcast. And today we have a special guest joining us from Washington, D.C., Dr. Ted Achacoso, founding pioneer of health optimization medicine and practice, also known as Home Hope, and founder of Chief Daydreamer, science officer at Smarter Not Harder Inc., makers of Troscriptions.
Such a wonderful conversation on altruism and mindset and how we really can make a difference. Such a beautiful conversation on how we think we're in control, and there's lots of factors around us in our environment and even in our environment in us that actually dictate what we say, how we feel. Well, we appreciate you being here. Really, thank you so much for your time. We know that you are an incredibly busy person. And thank you for answering.
Mm-hmm.
It's super helpful. But really, in the podcast today, our platform, it's really getting to know you and getting to know your journey. I mean, you are in our perspective, you are such a fascinating person. And we learn, crazy amount of things just by coming up and saying hello to you, and no, but really, your life experiences have got to be just, a lot.
Look, guys, 100 years from now, who cares whether or not I lived or died? So, it's better to share what I know now.
Yes.
Because I can't share them anymore when I'm dead, right? So.
Right.
No, but to have that perspective too, right?
Yeah.
Like, world domination. Like when global. I'm sorry, not world, global, right?
I was going to put I was going to put cosmic, but then that's a reach.
But really, when you say that, we're like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I believe you. If other people would say that, I'd be like, yeah, right.
Right.
But when you say that,
we're
watching it happen. We get it. Yes. So those, So we, really getting to know you and, really what makes you and why this, why, and you make all of this so special. So that's what we want to talk about.
Okay. You guys are such fun people, right? How could I say no to people? Yeah. To people who are sincere and really wanting to change even just a bit, the shift away from disease to health.
Yes.
Little things that we do ultimately will reach a bifurcation point in chaos where we actually move to the movement towards health. And people don't know this, but the logo of Home Hope, if you take a look, that's the butterfly on top that's flapping its wings at the desert of Sonora, actually producing a hurricane in the Pacific, right? That's a butterfly effect. And that's what we want. That's actually what we want Home Hope to do for health, right? Where the tiny fluttering of butterflies' wings that shifts the direction away from disease into health. We've been in a disease-based model for too long. And that's insanity because we keep on applying, a disease-based frameworks to what are supposed to be health-based issues, right? So, and those two are very different, right?
Yes, absolutely. What was your aha moment to switch that thinking from disease to health?
When I, my training, right? I trained in pharmacology and toxicology, so I know how to poison you. And I was trained in interventional neuroradiology, and I used to tell people that I used to poke brains for a living. So I know that shit. It's like, I have that mentality. And then I came here to the United States, and I did medical informatics, artificial intelligence research, and also I ran a cognitive neuroscience lab for about 7 years, back before it was vogue to run these kinds of labs, right? Before, I was inventing my title as a computational neurobiologist, and now there are really card-carrying computational neurobiologists, right? And then I went to Paris to get training in anti-aging medicine, which is essentially hormone balancing, and nutritional medicine. And at that time I chose Europe because nutritional medicine was not offered in the United States, right? And at the same time, what would people say? It's like, you trained in nutritional medicine in the United States, all the people there are obese. So it's like seriously,
Yep.
you know. And I noticed that the what I certified to actually was still disease oriented, right? The following nutrition for the following set of diseases, etc. So when I was thinking, I've already been thinking about this for a long time, because there are things that were not taught to us in medical school, or in fact in health education, schools that provide health professionals education that are non-physicians. You know, things like mitochondria, microbiota, you know, epigenetics. This is like medicine 2.0. How come we don't have a scaffolding for this, right? And so when I started practicing, I said, let me develop a framework for this, you know, where it's a framework for health, not a framework for disease. And so that was my aha moment when people were always asking me about disease. And it took me about 3 years to turn my head around and say, no, I am not looking at you as a diabetic. I'm looking at you from a different level, right? Which is at the level of the cell and the networks of the cell. And then when I was able to basically articulate that the body is the ecosystem itself, right? Not the individual, not the population, individuals and population is the ecosystem, but rather the cells in the body are your population and the ecosystem. Then suddenly, you know, it was making sense to. It's like it's kind of like this, you know, when a patient comes into me and has all of these recommendations from the endocrinologist, the diabetologist, the neurologist, you know, the cardiologist, etc. Like, what the fuck? Why are there like 3 or 4 different recommendations here, right? So, you know, this behavioral, lifestyle, and nutritional changes must be trackable. But then at the time, I said, what am I going to use to take a page from the illness medicine, right? What am I going to present as an objective measure of that? And I thought that humans were becoming too gene-centric. You know, gene-centric can only, you know, tell you the potential of what's going to happen, but it's not exactly what's going to happen, right? You have epigenetics and all of these other contextual factors for the expression of your genes. So, you know, and metabolomics is already coming out of the labs, right, at the time. It's been 50 years in research, and then now it was already possible for patients or clients, as you call them, because they're not sick, right? When they come to me, they're clients. I don't call them patients because they're not sick. I set aside their disease. And then, you know, all the things that we used to memorize in biochemistry, like, holy fuck, we could measure those now, right? And the more important part is, you know, I was teaching someone who was a biochemistry PhD, right? It's like, oh my God, Dad, you know, the medical students are responding so well because I am not emphasizing on the intermediates, but I rather am emphasizing what can actually stop them and what supplements can be given, right?
Yeah.
And that we can measure those particular supplementation now by clinical metabolomics, and how much is alpha lipoic does he need, or B1, B2, B3, you know, how much magnesium and so on. Before it was all guesswork. And I tell people, just because this won't kill you doesn't mean you cannot overdose on them. So, you know, as a measure. So the other thing that actually was a turning point for me was actually got very angry when I was getting a CME certification for my students, who are doctors, right, in mitochondria, and the regulating body just said, we can't give you CME for that. Mitochondria, doctors already know that. It's like seriously, these things never advance anymore. And the other thing is that I was very mad because also when you see all of these magazine advertisements that your patients or your clients read, right? Like, is vitamin C good for me? Is vitamin E good for me? And they would overdose on C, and they would, do all of these things. Like, if they ask me if vitamin E is good for me, I just say, let's measure it. If you need it, we'll give it to you. If you
Yeah.
don't, then we won't, right? So,
Yeah.
and these are the kinds of things that I think is the difference now. The realization that there is no standard of care for health. There are various standards of care for disease because, well, hey, they will sue you if you didn't follow the standard of care for disease, right? But
Right.
there's no standard of care for health. And for me, health optimization medicine, that framework provides a standard of care for health, right? Because there's no one existing standard of care for health. So even this, you're preventive medicine. I said, no, we're not preventive medicine because it's preventing disease. We're after optimizing health, which is a different goal altogether.
Right.
That's a continuous goal, right? When you optimize, when you disease, you just want it to be under control or it's gone altogether. So the metaphor that students actually respond to very well is the dashboard of your car, right? Before, the old cars didn't have this, but now, the cars are even better because they tell you it's 3,000 miles, time for you to, change your oil filter, check your tire pressure and all of that. Your car will be running, but it will not be running optimally, right? You have a little low tire pressure here, your windshield wiper fluid is a little bit low, but when it rains, you're fucked, right? So these are the kinds of things that used to be we weren't able to monitor. And the big part of that is that in medicine, when we do anatomy, physiology, right, and then biochemistry, we immediately jump to pathology, right? Or pathogenesis, the origins of disease, as if we already know how to run a normal body, but we don't. We're not taught that. We're taught how to do it, how to break it down. That's why even all our references, like the recommended dietary allowances, all of those are just for you to survive, but not thrive. Right?
Right.
So what was missing was the salutogenesis part, the health optimization medicine part. Like, okay, before you actually get sick, we must actually know how to run the body properly, right? So the body has a make and model, as I like to say, we're a Ford Model T, we stabilize in the Paleolithic era, the hunter-gatherer era, even if we have a Lamborghini world, right? So, but even in a Lamborghini world, you could check our roads. Lamborghinis don't do well on regular roads; they do well on racetracks. So that's sort of like it's for me a continuous. It's like the generation of a pearl. It's just like me just getting my saliva coated on this sand that irritates me, and I hope it's enough to make people think. If I'm able to make people think like, hey, yeah, we have too much of a disease-based framework here. Why don't we shift towards a health-based framework? Even if it were not the duty of disease-oriented doctors to do it, because we need them, right? For acute infections, for surgery, etc. We need them. But applying these principles to what have become chronic diseases, it's now yielding results. When certain clients come to me and they've been like on metformin for 30 plus years, and after 3 years of health optimization, they're off metformin. These things are just side effects of what you do, right? If you take care of the fundamental cell, which is common to everything, it is a nucleus, mitochondria, cytoplasm, blah, blah, blah. Many of my students even know a lot of those better than I do. But, who takes care of them? No one, right? No one takes care of them. So there's a different level, right? Whereas the illness medicine doctors take a look at it on organ level, we really take a look at it from the cellular level, right? Which is comprised, which comprises all of the organs, right? And then taking a look at, rather than what makes them diseased, I actually take a look at what makes them healthy, right? So that's really, really very important for the students to understand. And in fact, I'd like to say this. You've heard me say this, guys. The only true thing that a mentor can give to you is perspective, right? The rest you can GPT. So point your head somewhere. It's like, okay, take a look at it this way. Oh, still cannot see it? Here. Take a look another way and another way until it becomes second nature to you, right? To look at it from the foundational level rather from the disease level. Because disease is a downstream effect, right? So we take a look at like what's upstream. In fact, what's upstream is probably not even the metabolome or not even the fundamental cell, right? Once we are able to detect, all of these things that they talk about, energy and all of that, the key issue with that for me is that we don't have any diagnostics, right? We have a lot of purportedly therapeutic tools for those, but we don't have diagnostic tools, right? So what's the level of your energy here and so on and so forth. And believe me, it's not because I'm not trying. I've been looking around the world for diagnostics for those and still haven't found something, and something that's really acceptable to both the medical community and to the health optimization medicine community, right? So that's the long answer to why I want to keep on pushing. It's the thing that actually gives me, a spring in my step when I wake up in the morning. And this thing will probably not be done with me. It's like I start this. It's like it's up to you guys whether or not you want this medicine for your children and your children's grandchildren. Otherwise, your children and your grandchildren will be as fucked up as you now. So, take your choice.
That's true. Yeah. When you first started your medical journey, before you even became Dr. Ted Achacoso, when you just started thinking about getting into the medical field, could you have ever dreamed that you would be at this point where you are today?
No. Like in marriage, there's something as monogamy. In my career, I'm a serial monogamist, so it's one career after the other. but there are common themes, right? And the common theme for me, which I enjoy a lot, is the structure of networks and how from all the way from the geometry to the mathematics and everything else. Those have interested me a lot because we are a network system, right? And it's very hard for us to look at ourselves as a network of cells that are cooperating with each other, right? If you see, for example, Michael Levin's work on where he was just controlling the bioelectricity, the bioelectricity via the ion channels of a cancer cell, right? It really wanted to get out of the control of the network, right? But then it couldn't because then the other cells were keeping it under control. Their body is like that, right? And people don't understand that our body produces cancer cells every day. And they go, oh my God, cancer. No, you produce cancer cells every day. It depends on how strong and how alert your immune system is, right? And as I like to say, the immune system, which is your Department of Defense, has a very, very big energy budget. And so you have to take care of mitochondria to do that. And, why is the Department of Defense have a big budget? Because, as you said in your podcast, right? How do you take care of your gut? Well, when you eat food in order to get energy, right? But in order to process that food, it will have to be absorbed. And holy fuck, you can actually get toxins and bacteria, etc., from the food that you eat. So the first thing that the body has to do is, hey, I'm gonna absorb this, but I'm gonna protect itself. And as you know, the gut immune system, the gut is the largest immune system of the body. When I was in medical school, man, that was the bone marrow. It's only in the past 15 years where we actually acknowledge the gut is an immune system, right? So, but take a look at this this way, Dara. It's more like the technology also evolved with us. In order to see inside the cell, right? Before you can only take a look at the organs, right? And then now slowly we develop all of these technologies to take a look inside the cell. So now that it's possible to take a look inside the cell, why don't we take a look inside the cell and see how we can apply it clinically? And now that the prices are already low enough such that the clients can actually afford it, then we take a look, right? And take a look at their subacute toxicities. For example, very common is mercury toxicities, right? From pescatarians. There's now there's arsenic from milled rice, right? Cadmium. When I was in Europe, cadmium was predicted to be the next most dangerous heavy metal, right? Because during the 1940s, during the World War, we used cadmium to coat the rebars so that they won't rust, right? But now they actually are already bombed, and they're now rusting, and they're actually leaching into our water and food chain.
Soil,
so these are the kinds of things that we can, that's my opening line to my clients, like see here. There's a cognitive effect, like holy fuck, I have subacute poisoning, right? And then you can say, okay, here's why you're feeling weak. Your mitochondrial intermediates are here, see, you lack these B vitamins, you have very low magnesium levels, and so on. And more interestingly, the way I do things with my clients, because I'm old enough, is actually one part slapping them in the face and one part rubbing them in the back, right? So it's like I love vitamin D, right? And all of my clients, I make sure that their D levels are actually above 50, actually preferred above 60, and they know that because they feel it, because after they hit about 50 or 60, their diseases seem to be easier to manage, right? And they feel to have a lot of energy. And why is that? Well, because vitamin D gene is actually older than us as a human species, right? It's about 650 million years old. We're only 250,000 years old as a species. So not even million, right? So hey, the domestication of the cat occurred only 10,000 years ago. That's why it still has the feral gene. That's why people ask me why I'm not a cat person, rather I'm a dog person. I'm a dog person because I love to. I'm a masochist. I like to be punished by the dogs to pick up their poop, right? They're the wiser ones. But cats, I used to have a cat as a child. Once they are back in the wild, because my cat actually mistakenly actually slept in the farm truck that was like, a couple of hours away from the house, and it was with a mountain and a river, and there's no access there except by heavy duty truck that can cross a river, because there was no bridge. So she was isolated there for 3 months. When I saw her again, she didn't recognize me, and that's the switching of the feral genes, and that's the effect of of us. That's why we have evolutionary medicine as our one of our modules in health optimization medicine, right? It's because for you to understand how you evolved, you didn't evolve perfectly. You actually evolved for what was adaptive. Adaptive. You never knew whether or not you were going to survive, because it's a random variation, right? It's blind variation. There you understand that the point of view of health optimization medicine, signs and symptoms of disease are not signs and symptoms of disease. They're actually compensatory mechanisms of the body to rebalance itself. So these are modes of healing by the body, right? And that's why I say, if you basically irritate a cell, and the cell is gonna say, "Hey, I want to fucking survive," and its prime directives are to survive and reproduce, and therefore you are going to form a cancer cell, right? So the way I tell it to students is like, "Oh, become the cell. Take a look at the world from from inside your cell, and look outside," right? It may be beneficial for you, right? But it's not beneficial for the entire body or the ecosystem. Right? And then, of course, over that, we layer all of our fucking stories about, oh, me, la, la, whatever. But really, what's happening there is that we have not looked deep enough. Right? There's still many things that we don't know. A mentor of mine once told me, he's like, Ted, if you take a look at it from the perspective of science. For me, science is just one of the perspectives that you can get into. All we have are models, of the world, and all it has is models of the world. And the reason why it's been successful is that it's been able to explain or predict what's going to happen, right? So that's the for this dimension at least. Oh, you're smiling now. So so for that's what happens when you take entheogens, right? So for this dimension at least, the scientific model is one of the model that works, right? But other models would be energetic models. Other models could be magical models. Before I used to be such a staunch, I was a neuroscientist, I was a doctor, and I was like, no, science holds the truth. The thing is, we don't know anything. So what my mentor said, Ted, there are certain things that we will never know, but what we do in science is to push that great wall of ignorance forward and see whether or not our model still works based on our data points. That's why, I love statistics. I taught statistics for about 20 years. And our brains are not intended for statistics. It's meant for groups of 6, man. 6 or 7. That's our world. So when you take a look like, like the Massachusetts, refusing the seatbelt law the first time, right? Well, it crumples my shirt, But the rationale there is that, well, if you're in a seatbelt and you actually get into an accident, the degree of your injury is actually very much less, right? So, and that is actually a rationalist view of the world, right? There's a scientific view of the world, and then there's a rationalist view of the world, and people don't know this. They think that science is rational. No, it isn't. Right? A rationalist view of the world actually takes a look at the statistics of things, right? It's funny. I was interviewing someone the other day, and I said, "What's the difference between, what's the difference between risk and uncertainty?" Right? Risk is calculable. You can use statistics to calculate risk. And uncertainty is not calculable, right? And when does uncertainty happen? When there are humans involved. So, so in any practice, like even in health optimization, medicine, etc., you know that there are uncertainties because this depends on how sensitive your client is to how compliant your client is, because you may have the best militaristic protocol out there, but if your client doesn't follow it, it's useless, right? So over the years, I've learned actually to be to be less strict, but rather flow with the client, right? As regards when they want to take things and so on, because you're really it's very different from being the God doctor and telling your client, this is what you're supposed to do. No, it's more like, okay, let's take the reins of your health together, because you know your body more than I do, and let's work together, right, to optimize it. And optimizing really means that bringing back your metabolite values back to when you were between 21 and 30 years old. That's fun. For hormones, it's like 25, and there's a standard deviation for that. And I actually like to joke there that, Americans are scaredy cats because, they will move the hormones to 30, but in Paris, we move everything to 25, right? So it's like, seriously, differences with the way people do things, right? And there also, we give you a higher dose of the hormone first, and then we titrate it down. Here, we're like okay, here's 0.25, here's 0.5. It's like when are we ever going to finish? However, it's nice to marry those kinds of techniques, right? So the key here, really, guys, is when you're looking at a network and when you're looking at all of these cells and being able to shift your perspective towards there, then you're working with things that are fundamental. Then you can affect, that's upstream, right? Then you can affect all the downstream. That's why I said, when your disease gets better or when it actually disappears, that's just a beneficial side effect. We had nothing to do with that, right? All we did was actually make your fundamental cell healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think also in addition to that, like when you make it a lot easier to swallow for our clients. Like helping them through their health optimization journey becomes so much more meaningful and a lot more simple than, approaching it from the traditional way that
A
we were taught in
doctor.
medical school.
Mhm.
Like it really embraces the whole, we're working on this together, like you were
Mhm.
just mentioning. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
And the focus on the health versus the disease becomes very, very much more important to them.
Yeah, and also, Dara, that quality of that voice, that's already very soothing enough to be healing for my patients. And that's a thing that I tell my students, right? Is you have to observe everything that your client responds to, right?
Mhm.
I see my demographic is very different. I have a stratospheric demographic. They respond to different things, right? And there's the A plus crowd, the A crowd, the A minus crowd, the B crowd, etc. And you have to notice that, because all of the subtle cues that are coming from you, right, are basically uh, seen by them in some subconscious way. And for example, if they see me, while I'm seeing my clients, they see me like taking my a supplement that's due at noon, for example, and they see that I have compliance, right? So it's like, oh my God, do I have to do that? And yeah, I go, yeah. I just, but Dr. Ted, just looking at you and how energetic you are and everything else, I think
Mhm.
I'm gonna do that, right? So there's that
Yeah.
kind of positive loop that goes with that, right? So you can that here's the blessing and the curse of health optimization medicine, right? You have to walk the talk. So I can never be fat. I can,
That's right though, right? Like
I,
who would trust your doc like who would trust a doctor that it doesn't take care of themselves, right? Or
Well,
any, right?
there are many in different specialties, especially the heart specialties, that are. But anyway, we are not going to talk about that, right?
No,
Um,
no. But what I do want to mention though, the thing that drew us to you and every single time you speak is, truly you embody altruism.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
And to find that in a healthcare professional, I mean, really it's beautiful.
Inspiring.
well, the thank you. David, the thing that I was uh, the Smarter Not Harder was the company that I started, right, in order to actually make the Troscriptions, products, and that was actually intended to fill in the stopgap measures that you have to make for your clients until they get health optimized. Optimization takes long, three,
Mm-hmm.
6, 9 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some even take 2 years before they actually have a full benefit. And I tell them, my business is making you addicted to the feeling of being health optimized so that you know what it means to fall off the bike, right? And when you fall off the bike, you're actually, respond a lot faster with that. But do you know the mission and of Smarter Not Harder is
Please.
to to decrease suffering in ourselves and to decrease suffering in others, knowing that there is no other. So we adhere by that, right? We adhere
Yeah.
by that, and that's the source of altruism that you are actually saying. I've taken a look at a lot of writings and podcasts about effective altruism, about what happened to Sam Bankman-Fried, and all of those kinds of things. But really, for me, the way I did things was okay. Here's a for-profit company, is a major donor to a non-profit company. Even if you're not yet making any money, in your for-profit company, start donating already to the non-profit, be it your service or anything else that you can donate,
Mm-hmm.
your lectures, your time, and so on.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one is yin, it's nurture. You're nurturing the future crop of health practitioners to be more aware that there is actually a different framework out there for health. And and the other part is the young part. Well, here's a for-profit company, right? So that way the wheel of charity just goes and moves forward, right? Otherwise, if we have an unenlightened leadership, as I call it, we will continue to pollute the waters. We will,
Right.
we will continue to do human trafficking. We will do all of these things. And one of the things that's stuck in my head, as an entheogen user, is that we are in one organic spaceship that's hurtling in space. We think of spaceships as like it's metal and rockets. No. This is an organic spaceship. It's twirling around, at thousands of miles an hour, in spiral form, and the solar system and the galaxy, and all of that. And it's the only one we've got, guys. So so for me, it's like, you begin, for me, when you go to school, right, you begin to see that, your family, you say, oh, I have a responsibility towards me, my family, etc., right? It's very close system. But when you go to a university, it's like, holy shit, I have responsibility towards my community, my society, my fucking country. Oh my God, I have responsibility towards the world.
Our future. Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you take some more and you go, holy fuck, I have a responsibility towards the cosmos. But I am not supposed to wake up those people who don't want to be awake to these things. But being able to just say, hey, this is not just my responsibility or your responsibility, right? Having that kind of perspective into, you are also part of this huge network, right? Not only of humans. We're only one species. As I love to say, humans are not the most important species. They're just the most pernicious, right? So we're just one species. We're not even the most important. The second most populous species on the world is rats. But anyway, I just found things that I remember. I just found out about that like the other day. I don't know why I was looking, because I'm very sensitive to the human carrying capacity of the world, right? How many humans can the world actually maintain? Mm-hmm. And in an old interview of the guy who started the whole paleo prescription, right? It was S. Eaton Boyd. It was actually not Laurent Cordain. I'm old enough that he lectured at George Washington University Medical School before, and he had an interview, and he was asked, like, realistically, how many people can actually live around the world just on the Paleolithic prescription? And he said, you gotta reduce the population of the world to simply 800,000 people. I said, holy yeah!
Wow.
That's why we have to do, for me, the way we do it is that we're sapiens, like we're wise. And so we remedy everything, and with science and technology and whatever else we can remedy it with, right? Psychedelics, and change the outlook of people of when enough is enough, right? Because many people don't know when enough is enough, right? It's like already you have a roof over your head, you have your cars, you have your education, you have this and everything else. Like, we aren't able to say, okay, this is enough for me. And we have economic studies of how much earnings and so on, but we don't put it to use, because that evolutionary directive to survive and to produce and to provide for ourselves is very strong. So, and that's why one of the things that they do in like priesthoods or sisterhoods, right, is they remove this by making them take vows of poverty, right? And vows of chastity is reproduction, vows of obedience to your authority. Right. And it's like, yeah, and look how powerful it got them. It's like, and these are the things that you realize, like, yeah, that's the extreme, and there's the other extreme. The Buddha has always advocated for the middle way. For me, it's just for me, it's just being more aware and awake to what's actually happening, right? For me, it's like having that meta perspective that, hey, we're all connected to each other, so when you start something, right? Start something that's already balanced at the beginning, right? So there's health optimization medicine, there's Troscriptions, smarter not harder, and I encourage entrepreneurs to actually have this. It's called the reciprocal model, right? It's not even a pledge that, I'm going to donate after after I'm successful, or the new thing that was just being proposed or just being done, which I read about last week, is when you start a startup, you commit that 50% of the sale will go to charity, right? And on your exit, that's committed on exit. So you already know that company, when it exits, 50% will go to charity. And for me, it's like, no, we need your charity now, not on exit. Do it now, give it now, because the world needs it now. Now, not just us humans, trees, the animals, the earth in general. Only when you feel, in one of my birthdays, I spent in one of the islands in the Philippines. It's, Amanpulo is one of the Aman things. I granted it was just like, it was very expensive, but it was a gift to me. And it's like I was meditating on the water, and the water is just like as warm as bath water, right? In Hawaii you don't have that. It's because it's the fucking Pacific. So it's like you call this a fucking beach? Anyway, there's no continental shelf in here. But anyway, when I was meditating, I actually, and the water was to my chest and it's warm, and the sun was setting, and I was doing a gratitude meditation that I am alive even at this point in time, right? Because you never know where you're gonna die, and suddenly, there's this just feeling that you could feel the heartbeat of the earth, right? It's just this rhythmic thing that you feel in your body that she's alive, right? The waterways are her circulatory system. The trees, the Amazon rainforest, the trees everywhere. That's her respiratory system, right? So and I like to say this, the earth doesn't care and the universe doesn't care one whit about what we say or do, right? If we destroy the earth as much, she will kick us out, right? So it's like, who cares about your dreams and everything else, in one massive tidal wave, she can just wipe us all, or in one whole episode of another ice age, we'd all be gone, right? So I wonder whether or not those who do the cold plunge will actually survive that. I'm kidding.
Well, we would all die. But you mentioned entheogens.
Yeah, entheogens.
And yes. So tell us about that from your perspective, your connection with it, how it benefits you.
Yeah, it is very funny. When I was younger, a dear friend of mine, the guy who founded the whole socially responsible investing movement, which is now a global movement, right? He's also one of my mentors, actually in finance. And he, he said, Ted, would you like to participate in an ayahuasca ceremony? And I said, what's the active ingredient there? Me, ever like, what's the molecule? Dimethyltryptamine. I said, so I did my work on it, but that was a long time ago, right? And I said, okay, it's not produced in the body. I want something that's actually produced by the body, right? And so on. And then 20 years later, when the studies are coming out that it's produced by the body, etc., and then I started reading about the experiences of people. And so I decided to, not here in the United States, to extract the crystal in my kitchen. right?
Okay.
And because I, as a one trained in pharmacology, I wanted to know exactly how many milligrams it would take, right? So it's a trial and error. The first time, it's like, no, 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 no. I said, this thing, I said, all this vomiting is not actually
Yes.
serving anything.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
there's so much lore around it. Oh, that's the, you have to purge and blah 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 blah. So you can create as many stories as you can. That's an MAOI function, guys. So
Yeah, yeah.
so what I so what I did was I actually created my pharmawaska. My friends called it Achahuasca after my last name. And
That's great.
when I trained in Paris, I actually found this equivalent of the vine, right? So of the Banisteriopsis caapi vine, and it was pure and it was reversible. So I started working on, with a friend of mine, I started actually working on a protocol where it could be administered, in a controlled environment, where, I could supervise and actually take a look at the dosing, the dosing, how many doses, etc., etc. One of the things that people actually misunderstand is that these are not addictive things. When I used to dose myself every 2 months or so, right? So and the gifts were just incredible because one of the realizations that you get in there is like there are dimensions other than this one, right? There are dimensions other than this one. So, but I'm not gonna force you to see them. It's like, and the other thing is one of the actually most memorable gifts that I had was waking up at 4 a.m. and my body writhing in just pure bliss, and this a feeling of reassurance that nothing, you're just so secure, a bottomless abyss of security, right? That nothing you're ever going to do is ever going to hurt you, right? There's nothing to get hurt. There's no one to get hurt. It's just like this just feeling of reassurance that everything was all right, whatever it is that you do. And for many people, the insecurity is actually a problem, right? Insecurity with things that
Right.
are material, insecurity that I should get some more, and so on and so forth. In fact, in health optimization medicine, that our insecurity about food actually led us to agriculture and animal husbandry. And that changed the trajectory of our health, right? So because we wanted to be sure that we had something to eat, we started to plant, we had started to farm, we started to domesticate animals instead of doing the foraging for food and hunting for our meat. We stopped doing that. And I said, why did we do that? Because by nature we're so insecure about our energy source, right? We want to secure energy source, and because when you have a secure energy source, then you can increase your progeny, right? So and once you recognize that those are programs in you, you could say, do I need to activate these programs or not, right? So and that kind of awareness actually comes with entheogens. Ever since then, I've actually, you know me, I like having my molecules synthesized by laboratories, etc. And I like mixing and matching, and so you're asking what my relationship is to them is, for me, is being able to, because people ask what everyday enlightenment feels like, right? If Zen describes as the ordinary day, you're just 2 inches off the ground. And how the fuck do you say that to someone? So I started creating some Troche creations that are unavailable to the public, based on the newest studies on how the brain works, right? So there are major circuits in the brain that can be modulated in order to make you feel something like everyday enlightenment, right? So what it is that your brain is very quiet of thoughts. When there is, you and the big advantage there is that your ego will arise and you can watch it rise, right? It's just another role. And then, if you have to get angry, then get angry, but you know that it's a script because it's a role that you're acting, right? In
Right.
order to get your response from the other person, for example, it's like, okay, but there is no real anger inside, right? You're actually just running, you're in a play, and you realize that you're the actor in the play, you're not the role, right? So, and there's a difference. Knowing that you're an actor, that meta part that you're an actor, and your role demands that you're able to extract all these emotional responses from your audience, and your audience at the time happens to be this person that you're about to actually, shove a soap in his mouth. So that's the that's the kind of things that I deal with, right? Because this can be done with mindfulness meditations and all of those, but it can take you 30, 100 years, and you'll not know what it is, right? So with entheogens like DMT, for example, that's peak experience. Yeah, people love MDMA, right? And that's another peak experience, right? A different frequency of energy, if you like to phrase it that way. So those are different peak experiences. But what about plateau experiences? Because our everyday lives are plateau experiences, right? So for me, it's like, how can I give you an experience of what a plateau experience feels like, right? In every day, right? Like when you're just, for me, the way I explain it is like, when you're washing dishes, you're just washing dishes. Yes, folks, I still wash dishes even if I have a dishwasher. So and your attention is actually there, right? And the way I say it is that you are the kid inside a snow globe looking out at the snow, and at the same time you are the snow globe itself, like knowing that you contain the kid in there. That kid in there is the role. Right, the snow globe is the actor. So that's the way I look at these things, and then separate peak versus plateau experiences. Because people can end up chasing peak experiences all the time. It's like, oh, holy fuck, I'm enlightened. No, dear. It's just like taking anabolic steroids in the gym, right? So you get big, you get swole, blah, 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 blah. But in the end, after your cycle, right, you still have to do your regular exercise, which is you still have to meditate, right? So, and that's how I tell people, because your entire life, is a meditation in itself, right? And it doesn't have to be fucking sad. As I tell my students, there are enlightened assholes all the time. Look at me. But anyway, so anyway, you asked about my relationship to them. I am, although I would love to support the point of view, the traditionalists, that they should be preserved, etc., etc. There's also that part of me is like, if you preserve that, then there's only a limited number of those people, right? But if you make this available on more acceptable, where I know how many milligrams I'm getting, I know what phases that are going through, I know what the liver is doing, I know what my kidneys are doing, it's a lot medically safer for people. You're able to give them baby doses instead of one, ego effacing dose that they get, and so it's like, well, that actually is a lot more useful, right? Than having to go to Costa Rica or going to, Peru or wherever it is that you want to go to have these things. But I do support that, right? I call it the pomp and circumstance, but the rituals are beautiful, right? The rituals are beautiful. It's just that, the rituals are those rituals is because that's how they evolved, right? Right. So for me, separating the story from the actual experience is actually my thing. But many people cannot separate the story from the experience. So that's fine too, right? And you wake up when you wake up. No one can force you to, right? The big difference there is that when you have stopped nounizing the verb. So you're egoing, right? You realize that your ego is actually a verb, not a noun. Then you began the process of unraveling, right? That you become seeing that the role is actually that's there rather than rather than you being an actor, is that you have a series of roles, right? And you think you're just one self, but there are actually multiple selves, right? I like Fadiman's term. We have multiple personality order, not multiple personality disorder, right? So, and we're that, we're the person standing in the bank, waiting. We're we're the people right here, talking, and then when you go see your clients or your patients, and then you're the doctor seeing them, so. You could see all when your parents call, it's like, okay, it's his father or mother, and your mother personality for mother changes if it's personality for father. All you need to be is to be sensitive to those things. For me, I told my brothers this. It's like, when you call me, I said, I will ask you a question and you have to answer. I said, because that will change the tenor of her call. And I do it every time they call. Is this a brother call or is this a doctor call? So you can separate the roles immediately, right? Because if this is a doctor call, you will have to follow what I tell you. If it's a brother call, I don't fucking care, right? So you're the one suffering. I'm not, like,
but I will listen.
As health experts, people ask you, like, oh, what can I do for this? And then they won't do it anyway. So I've learned to say, like, well, you're the one suffering. I don't care. Follow my advice, follow it. But when it is a client, then you are co-invested with them, right? In terms of what happens to them. And that's the genuine compassion that emanates, which you don't actually share with your family. I'm kidding. But I was telling our mutual guy, Boomer, it's like where this was from I think Ram Dass, when he said, if you say you're enlightened, try spending the Thanksgiving with your family. But anyway, but anyway, that's the kind of sort of like realizations that you have. They're not revelations. They are realizations that you make unto yourself. Aside from the fact that you're connected to everyone else, is the fact that you are what you are to them is just a visible role as you, right? But in what happens is that there are actually so many selves that you project out there. They're just all unified by the associations between the selves, right? So even in there's no longer multiple personality disorders, now called dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah.
Like a different name for chronic fatigue disorder is myalgic encephalitis, right? So this is in dissociative identity disorder, you could see that the one with the most complete personality is actually the first one. And then as more emerge, there's less and less, right? There's less and less because there's less and less parts that they could actually cannibalize to use for themselves. But the more interesting, and I don't know, how true or how verifiable it is that when a personality comes out, the person is diabetic, and when another personality comes out, the person is not diabetic at all. Those are enigmas of our times, right? So things that actually merit some investigation. But for now, we need to be satisfied that we have no answers. Just as people say, "Oh, this is the answer to this," and it's also that's the thing. It's like our desire to make things permanent. Like, this is it. This is how I want to live my la la la. No, everything is impermanent, right? Everything changes, and being comfortable in chaos is one of the gifts of your entheogens, right? I'm not a mushrooms guy. Mushrooms actually irritate the hell out of me. It's like, if you want me to be the total bitch, give me mushrooms.
Well, we would love to try some ayahuasca.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ted, for joining us here today. and just giving us, just a different, giving everybody an idea of, who you are, outside of what, the outside, sees you as and projects you as and, advertises you as, because you're like, just multiple things going on at the same time. Founding pioneer of health optimization medicine and practice, right? What is it? The chief daydreamer, right? Is what they call you,
Yes.
which is the science officer at Smarter Not Harder.
Yeah, it's actually put in chief on aeronaut, right? Because an aeronaut is daydreamer, and then Boomer said, "No one understands that." Well, I said, we're not in the business of going down. We're in the business of lifting people up. If they don't know what it means, look it up. So
I love your guys' dynamic.
Yeah.
Yours, Boomers, and Scott's. That's one of my favorites. Like, especially to see it live at your folk summit.
we're the unholy trinity. So
Yes. Yes.
I love it. I love it. We're so fortunate to have, finally all of you, as guests on our podcast.
no, I'm happy to. As I was telling Boomer, Boomer wished me actually have fun with you guys, and I said, how could I not have fun with those guys? Those guys are they're just some of the sweetest people I know, right? So it's just there's just this gentleness about you guys. It's just make it easy, right?
Oh.
So I'm going to kill you now.
Hey.
And it's a slow slash burn to the neck.
With a smile.
Yes, yes.
It might come up with that ayahuasca.
It's called parasympathetic killing, right? So
Yeah.
Hey, there we go. I can't. It's so funny because we always talk about, amongst the team here, about how we all first met and how we connected, and it's something that will always be memorable, and it's something that we'll always hold, close to our heart, and with that being said, we always talk about sanative or sanative connections here on Naopono, optimize your Nao, and one of the questions that we always ask is, what was your healing connection or your sanative connection?
being kind, that's how I connect. Knowing, that's why I gave you the mission of Smarter Not Harder, decreasing suffering in me, decreasing suffering in you, knowing that there's no difference between us. So, it's like I tell Scott, right? Ask your children what they want to be when they grow up, and and their answer should be to be kind, right? It's not to be an astronaut or to be a rocket scientist or to be a doctor. It's enough to be kind.
Yeah.
Right? So even it's a short life, guys. It's a short life, guys. I'm a kind asshole. So but and that's how you connect, right? That's how you connect healing, being genuinely concerned with them, right? And the thing is, you have to know how to stroke their ego enough and to slap it, when it's acting up, because mostly when people practicing health optimization medicine actually realize is that for the most part, your clients really just want someone to talk to who understands, right?
Absolutely.
Where the rest of the world cannot actually understand. Even their spouses or the people closest to them cannot understand what they're going through, right? And that goes for it's easier to spill your guts to a stranger than it is to your loved ones, right? Like, and why not? I can't be blackmailed. So anyway.
Well, that was beautiful. Well, thank you, Dr. Ted, for your TED Talk today.
For your TED Talk. Yes, absolutely.
I truly, I said this in the beginning, just coming up to say hello to you, we feel like smarter people walking away from you.
For sure.
There's always...
And for David here, and harder, I suppose. Smarter and harder.
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, we didn't share with him.
We didn't,
We did.
but you
Yeah.
can go ahead
Yeah.
if you want. Yeah.
Well, we are not going to be, unfortunately, at your Home Hope Summit, which we encourage everyone.
Yeah.
Honest to goodness, the best summit we have ever.
Yeah, if you're wanting to get
attended.
educated, and really being really focused on, the
Health
education, health
optimization. Yeah.
optimization, the focus on health versus disease.
Yeah.
This is where it's at.
Yeah.
They have a couple tables of vendors that are
Mhm.
supporting, but other than that, like I feel like it was one of the best, events that I went to
Yeah,
that I was able to
absolutely.
truly connect with other people.
Absolutely. And we were so looking forward to going this October, but we are not going to make it.
Oh.
So we will not be there. Yeah.
Well, you're at least you'd be there in a different dimension, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. 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 So again, we want to thank Dr. Ted, founding pioneer of health optimization, medicine, and practice, also known as Home Hope, and founder and chief daydreamer at
right.
Smarter Not Harder.
Yeah.
And you can find him at homehope.org and at Troscriptions on Instagram. And their amazing podcast, Smarter Not Harder, with Dr. Scott and Boomer Anderson. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Ted, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Ted. Aloha.